Yes, so why can't you find anything out about me without looking at data? Well, the reality is it's all out there somewhere, but the real challenge is it's all fragmented. So what I thought I'd do is I'd tell you a couple of anecdotes about how I find myself here today and how data has changed my life and how data is going to change everyone's lives. So actually, I got involved in data in the late 70s, which is rather depressing. And it was actually caused by the Vietnam War and the draft being abolished in America. And the US Defense Department couldn't recruit for the Army. And as a result, they started analyzing census data to work out where to put Army recruiting stations. That became retail location. I was involved in that project, and that became retail location. Retail location became geodemographics. I'm sure you've all heard of Acorn and Mosaic, and unfortunately I was in the early days of that too. And then coming after that, we got to individual customer data, and I'd just like to think about that data journey. So there we were in the late 70s. We had data on 150,000 streets of the UK, or in America, 450,000 block groups. And that was the smallest level of granularity we could get data about consumers on. And basically, you became where you lived. So we classified a street based on the sorts of people who live there, their demographics, and that became the way you targeted people. And the bandwidth in computing was such that that's all you could really do. The idea of measuring individual customers was rare. In fact, the only area that we've measured individual customers for a long time is spotting anomalies, as Martina described. Risk management is probably the one area where a huge amount of analysis has been done for at least 25 years using data in a consistent way. But of course, spotting anomalies is very different to understanding everyone. So that was really the challenge that we were trying to solve with geodemographics. As computing became more powerful, and before it became CRM, and by the way, CRM stands for creates real money for the IT companies. The whole issue of understanding individual customers was really, really challenging. And so what actually happened was, as the technology became possible that we could manage individual customer data, we started to look for patterns in consumer behavior. But inevitably, for all the reasons Martina and Nick have hinted at, our vision was fixed around what we know. And if you're a bank, that's okay. You've got my entire current account. You ought to know a reasonable amount about me. If you're a supermarket, that's okay, because actually, if you're the main supermarket I shop at, I can build a good picture of your life. But for many businesses, you know such a small part about me as an individual business that actually the whole CRM idea is a bit of a fallacy. And in fact, if you look at what has CRM really delivered, CRM has delivered thousands of people who now get frustrated with us calling numbers and not understanding which number we press next. CRM has created an environment where basically we've cut costs because actually we couldn't find a way of making money from the data about our customers. So what actually happened in, I would say, 70% of CRM installations is that the organization who got the technology started to use it to save cost rather than to benefit the customer. And I think that's the real challenge. If we really want to use data well, we've got to think about the customer. We've got to think about how do we improve their lives. And obviously, one of the real challenges with that is how do you understand them? Now, historically, there have been two sorts of mathematics applied. One has been predictive. I want to know the people who are going to churn. I want to know the people who are going to create fraud. I want to know the people who are anomalous to my data. And that's actually mathematically quite challenging, but it has a single outcome. If you're trying to understand lots of different people turning up at a supermarket and understanding their different wants and needs, you have to create a language of consumers. And that's actually what you need in your boardroom. You need the person who is responsible for your customer language. Now, that might be the CMO. It certainly isn't the CTO. It might be the CFO, actually, because if you're really going to be a customer-facing organization, your finance people need to think about the different needs of customers. But most importantly, it needs to be the CEO. Unless the chief executive gets data, gets the fact that they need to make their organization serve different groups of customers differently, it won't work. And that was one of our major criterias as we went on our journey around the world. So Tesco was a fantastic building block for us. We were a tiny company when we won that contract. And Dunnhumby grew massively because Tesco actually said you can't really work with anyone else in the UK because we couldn't work with Sainsbury's. And actually Tesco sells so much stuff, there was loads of people we couldn't work with. So our natural journey was to go outside of the UK. And what was interesting is as we conquered new countries, as we went to new countries to apply our methods, the real test was listening to the boardroom. And my acid test was, does the CEO go and walk his stores? And actually I can just about guarantee the ones we were successful with, the CEO spent time in their stores every week. And the ones we found really hard to work with, the CEO sat in his boardroom and the people who were responsible for stores were the people in the stores. Because if you really want to understand your customers, you can't do it all just through data. You've got to go and see what's happening on the ground. The other thing that's changed, I think, out of all recognition, is the fact that consumers now get data. They're ahead of you guys in terms of understanding what their data is worth. And there is a great big debate about, who owns the data. Well, actually, I think the customer owns the data. I think we're not very far away, and there are already people working on these ideas, where I will walk around with my personal data store on my phone, with my data, and I will be able to share my data with you if I want to, and I will dictate what you're allowed to see about me. Okay? And actually, I will say to you, what's my data worth? Because interestingly, we're still in the world where, we mentioned the banks a little while ago. The banks are a great example. The banks still give their best offers to new customers. They don't reward loyalty. Everyone talks about having loyalty, but they don't practice it. And actually, what they really mean by loyalty is I want you to be loyal to me. But loyalty is a two-way street. You have to be loyal to your customers as well. And unless you're prepared to be that, actually, everything you do with data will just fall by the wayside. Because basically, the consumer is savvy. They compare how good your internet presence is, not to your direct competitor, but to the sites they think are best. Whether that's the collaborative filtering of an Amazon to make sure that they get the right recommendations, or the convenience of a Tesco because they've got all the things you regularly buy already, pre-calculated in your shopping list, or whatever it is. They're making the customers' lives easier through the data. And I think that's really one of the most important things that you can think about in the way you use data in your business. But let's come back to this tapestry of data. What's actually happening is there's now a massive fragmentation of data. We've all heard about the big data thing, and to me, big data is a bit of a myth. My favorite example, as we've been looking at investing in new businesses, we've seen a couple of organizations who are in smart metering, and they get really excited. They're going to be able to read my meter every second and poll that data back. And compared to my meter man coming round once every 3 months, that's a million-fold increase in data observations on me. Frankly, I've not got a clue how they're going to commercialize it. It doesn't make sense to me that it adds any value until I can buy my electricity by the second and change my behavior and put my dishwasher on at 4:30 in the morning or something, so that actually benefits me. So the fact they can collect the data doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. And that's the case in so much of this big data myth. So much of the data being collected today actually has very little benefit to the customer. And if it doesn't benefit the customer, basically it won't be long before it falls into disuse. Certainly there are wonderful applications in serious situations like criminality, where data can be very powerful, but in a way that's not about the consumer, which is really my interest. So where is it all going? If you think about where we are with one-to-one targeting, if you look at the best in class of the people who've got reasonably rich data on their individual customers and doing one-to-one targeting, The response rates have now reached the stage where we wouldn't have dreamed about when I started my career. I remember when we thought an improvement from 1 to 1.5% response rate in our direct mail was fantastic. Okay? Today, for example, those little coupons that come out of the supermarket, the best supermarkets are getting 40% redemption on those coupons. 40%. There's not much further you can take that going forward. So you have to set your scene that actually it's not going to be about individual customer data. For me, the next step is how the networks work. And the people who are really equipped to benefit from that are the social media sites, who understand who I connect with and how they connect, the mobile phone companies who understand my calling circle and how I connect with other people, and people like that. They're the people who are going to give us the next generation of data that's going to revolutionize things. And I'll finish up with how Dunnhumby made the bulk of its money. Everyone thinks of us as a retailer play, but actually we made nearly all of our money from the suppliers. And a lot of organizations are talking about commercializing their data. We've got all this wonderful data on my customers, and I'm going to commercialize it. Now, I think people have to just take a sense check, which is who wants to buy it, right? There was a natural market for the supermarkets in their suppliers. The people who made the products that they put on their shelves wanted to understand their customers better. It was very simple to develop a value exchange between the supplier community and the retailer and the customer, which involved money changing hands in various directions to create a win-win-win. But for example, if you know my mobility from my mobile phone, yes, you can say that I'm here, and someone might pay you to know that I'm here, but does it benefit me? If it doesn't benefit me, you're going to generate resentment in the consumer. And if you generate resentment in the consumer, it won't be long before they switch their phone off and stop leaving it on. Because they'll say, well, why should you benefit from me? And you've got to work out what the value exchange is going to be if you're going to commercialize data. And the second point about commercializing data that I would raise is actually, just because you can, should you? And I'll finish with a little story. I have an elderly in-law, and her carer sent me an email that had been sent to her account about one of her bills that had gone overdue. And so I got this email and sorted out my mother-in-law's problem. But actually, for the next 6 weeks, the principal banner ad on my account, sorry Martina, it was a Yahoo account, was debt recovery services. Are you in trouble? Excuse me, no. And on that, I'll finish. Thank you.